Chapter 5 of The Phantom of the Opera, entitled The Enchanted Violin, follows Christine after the gala. She's behaving strangely and she doesn't want any help. She sends a letter to Raoul, and it's to state that she has gone to Paros to visit the grave of her late father. Here we are taken into a picture of Christine's history, and Raoul, it turns out, is a part of that history. They knew each other as children. The story of the scarf that Raoul mentions is part of that story. We have reference to an angel of music, and we see that his seeing her again after all these years at the opera is odd because she is behaving in a very strange way. At Paros, Raoul finds her, and she's visibly distressed, but she listens to what he has to say, that he's in love with her. He tells her that he knows about the voice in the dressing room, and she becomes shaken instantly. She departs from him. What he does next is that he heads over to the local graveyard to just look around and pass the time. He later goes to the beach, and here Christine finds him, and they start talking about memories and the angel of music. Raoul hears her story about the voice, and what's revealed is Christine thinks the voice is something that only she can hear, only he tells her that he can hear it too. And this causes her some consternation because she didn't know anyone else could hear the voice. The problem is that Raoul thinks it's something to kind of chuckle at, and that makes her unhappy, and she leaves him again. Later that night, Raoul hears something, and he looks to see Christine venturing out into the night. He, knowing that she has to check in with the landlady and he wants to spy on her, even though it's kind of wrong, and that he knows it's kind of wrong, he wants to spy on her, so he goes out through the window to follow her, and he thinks that she's going to pay a nightly visit to the grave of her father. Raoul ends up unconscious on the footsteps of the church. What follows is a questioning between Inspector and Raoul, and here he states that he followed Christine and that he doesn't know how he ended up unconscious on the steps. At some point in time, a mysterious violin started playing beautifully. Some skulls started rolling up at his feet, which came off as very odd to him. He spots a shadow. He approaches the shadow. He actually touches the cloak of this person, whoever is causing the shadow, and voila, he ends up unconscious. Chapter 6 of The Phantom of the Opera, entitled A Visit to Box 5. Here, the new management goes to take a look at Box 5 due to all the dealings that they've been having to face in reference to this box. What they find from looking on the box from the floor of the opera is they sense that they see something, but they see two different things. One of them thinks he sees the death's head, and the other one thinks that he sees Madame Giry. They run up to the box and they find that nothing is there, and they continue to think that it's all just a ruse. Chapter 7 of The Phantom of the Opera, entitled Faust and What Followed. The new managers, once again, they're in their office, and what they receive is a letter from OG, who is the opera ghost. The OG has sent them an ultimatum with 4 conditions and a warning. Richard is inflamed by all this, and it's at this point that the horse keeper enters, reporting a stolen horse. He claims it's the ghost. Madame Giry then enters, and Richard treats her kind of disrespectfully, and he does something strange to her. He makes her describe a semicircle, and then he proceeds to apparently step on her skirt. This causes her to wonder what it all meant, but then she figures it out, and she starts yelling at the top of her lungs in the hallway of the opera. At Carlotta's house, she too receives a note from the opera ghost, which is a direct threat not to sing at the performance tonight, and that she will be sorry if she does so. She's dismissive of it. She thinks it's actually Christine who's pulling a prank on her, and she's determined not only to follow through on singing, but she's also determined to ruin Christine by spreading rumors about her that she's the one behind all this, and that she's going to fill the theater with all of her admirers so that they will cheer Carlotta on during the performance so that she can gain back some favor. During the performance, the new managers decide to occupy box 5 during the performance. Moncharmin notices 3 people in the middle of the audience. He's wondering who they are, and it turns out that Richard knows them. He's invited them as potential. One of them could be potentially a new employee. They hear about Carlotta's rumor about Christine. They step out of the box for a minute to ponder whether they should look further into it, but then they decide, nah, it's silly following through with all this drama stuff. On returning to the box, they find a box of candy sitting there in box 5, and this is where they're starting to wonder about the ruse. As the performance continues, they hear the voice making a threat about the chandelier. The performance continues, and wouldn't you know it, Carlotta, as she starts singing, the sound of a croaking frog emerges in tandem with her singing, and it is causing a commotion throughout the audience. Next thing you know, they look over at the chandelier, and it is starting to potentially look like it's about to move or it's doing something. And soon enough, the chandelier falls directly into the audience and lands on the friend of Richard. In these 3 chapters, we get Raoul explained. At first, we were thinking, why does Raoul feel like he's entitled to touch Christine? Now we know. They were old friends, and when he had mentioned something about the boy who saved the scarf from the sea, that's an actual story from their childhood. So the idea that Christine doesn't remember him or is ignoring him is part of the tension in this story, because Christine is behaving strangely throughout all of this. It is not normal. We have a precursor to the appearance of the ghost in Christine's life long before the ghost ever was in her life. This is much earlier. This is a part of her history, and we have reference to what is known as the Angel of Music. This is an odd sort of precursor because the Angel of Music is in some ways supposed to be angelic, but it also has kind of this Santa Claus quality about it, in that it knows if you're naughty or nice to whoever it appears to. But in general, the Angel of Music is supposed to be good, whereas the ghost has an ominous quality to it. So there's a precursor, a kind of a foreshadowing that occurred in her life, but there's tension between the idea of the angel and the ghost. Again, we have class distinction making an appearance. Raoul states that he can't marry Christine due to the fact that he is a member of the aristocracy. She is not. She is a peasant from Sweden. Here we are really being bombarded by allusions, which are references to stories and different plays and things that are related to the cultural world of the arts. We have things like mentions of Faust, which is in the title, and we have Cerberus, we have Bacchus, and we have the Venus de Milo, among many others. It's been used a lot throughout the ages up to when the Phantom of the Opera was published, but it's really prevalent, heavily prevalent in the Phantom of the Opera because Paris is world-renowned for its love of the arts. And lastly, we have good old skepticism to think about again. Christine thought that she was the only one who could hear the voice, but then Raoul states that he heard it too, and he adds in the notorious thing that a skeptic could do, which is to laugh at someone's belief. That's plainly wrong, obviously. So it tends to make people who believe upset. That's why she gets upset. But it also creates textual tension that the supernatural either exists or it doesn't. I might add that Raoul touching the cloak of the mysterious figure at the graveyard adds a tangible aspect to the quality of the ghost. And I might also ask, what do you make of the sound of a croaking frog, or worse, the falling of a chandelier?